Everybody, what's going on? Welcome to episode 23 of the Building and Becoming Show. Another solo cast today. It's going to be a different one. We haven't done anything like this in a long while, probably not ever, because this is going to be just some uncontrollable rantings. And the topics are going to be so wide-ranging, they're not going to be too congruous. It's just going to be me going on about a few different things. Some of them are going to be current events. Some of them are going to be some things that I've recently found online and researched. And you know what? Some of them might be not all that true. I don't know. But they caught my interest, and it's going to spark some interesting conversations. So we're going to jump in, and I'm just going to see where the show goes. One of the great things about having a platform is that I can do this sometimes. I can hit record. I can sit here and have a conversation and give my thoughts and see where it goes. So creatively, it's very, very fun. And I'm excited to see what your guys' comments and thoughts are. So please engage with us. So a little bit about me, a little bit about the show for the newcomers. On YouTube, we are almost at 130,000 subscribers. So that's pretty cool. So thank you for that. And that's why I got a lot of people telling me, hey, you got to be careful about what you say and make sure that you're very measured and everything's done with intent and purpose because your following's growing and you're trying to build this. And it's just not me. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to be authentic to a fault. And I think that people that align with who I am and what I'm trying to accomplish and want some of that in their lives are going to come on board and be part of what we're doing. And those that don't, won't. And that's how it ought to be, because not everybody is for everybody. In fact, nobody is for everybody. And those that you think are for everybody aren't, and they're not being authentic and they're not genuine, and you should stay away from them. Building, becoming. What are we all about? We are about building a foundational faith in Christ while becoming strong, fit, capable in all areas of life. We're about growing closer to Jesus, lifting weights, prioritizing protein, drinking a lot of water, taking creatine, being freaking savages in all areas. And we're about doing it in community and encouraging each other. And no matter where you are, you can start from right where you're at, and we're going to meet you there and help you out. We've got different levels of coaching. You can reach out for all of those specifics. I don't want to wear you out too much with that, but I'm easy to find. I'm at Real Jim Moats on Instagram. We're on all the podcast platforms. New shows come out every Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Central Time. And our YouTube channel, of course, Building and Becoming. And that's where we have the most traction. So it's kind of fun doing all the platforms. So I'm going to just jump in. A couple things. First things first. This is going to get a little bit weird, but that's good. So I'm going to turn this way. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. I have a neck tattoo. That's right. I went to Las Vegas. Allie and I were gone last week. We went to Vegas. We each got tattoos. She got one on her leg. I got one on my neck. And it says simply Jesus. And it's in Allie's handwriting. So that's why it's special to me. And people ask me a lot at this point in the last few days, what in the F were you thinking? 53-year-old dude, you come from the corporate world, you get a neck tattoo, and it says perhaps the most controversial word that it could possibly say. What are you thinking? I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. First off, years and years ago, I said, you know what I'm going to do? Because I've got a lot of tattoos. I think that was probably my 11th or 12th tattoo. So I love tattoos. And I said decades ago, I said, you know what? When I am done with this rat race and when I feel that I'm living in total freedom, I'm going to get a tattoo and I'm going to put it right on my freaking neck. I didn't know what I was going to say, what it was going to read. But it came to me several weeks ago that I wanted to do something bold for Jesus. And one thing that a tattoo like this is going to do is it's going to spark conversation. And people are going to hate it, and they're going to come up to me sometimes, and they're going to want to get into it with me about that. And some people are going to spark up conversations, like happened at the airport on the way home. 2 days after I got it, young lady was like, hey, I saw your neck. I also love Jesus, and here's my favorite scriptures. And we had this conversation right in the security line. So it was pretty great. And so that cool stuff is going to happen. But I wanted to put it out there. And here's another reason I want to put it out there. I think that we are in a season where there is going to be a pendulum swing post-Trump, and that communist, socialist, progressive members of the Democrat Party are going to take over, and their season is going to swing so far to the left that there is going to be open religious persecution in this country. And when I say religious persecution, I mean against Jews and against Christians. And I want to make sure that everybody that approaches me knows where I stand. I'm not about hiding. If they want to come for Christians, put me at the top of the list. You can come for me first. Okay. And I can tell you that there's going to come a day when the rubber's going to meet the road and they're going to say to us, do you denounce Jesus Christ or do you claim him as your Lord and Savior? And many are going to cower and say they denounce him, and I will not. I will not willingly march onto the boxcar, so to speak, and get hauled off to whatever camp they want to take us to as Christ followers. They're going to have to put me down, and they're going to have to look at that word as the last thing on my neck and that name of Christ, the last thing before they do so. Does that seem pretty freaking outlandish and out there like it could never happen? Maybe, but that's my heart. I'm going to step up and say, here it is. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. He's everything that I live for, and I'm never going to denounce my faith. And he's everything. And it's right there with every pump of blood and heartbeat in my body, right on my throat. So that's why the name Jesus is on my neck. And that explanation is going to have people rolling some eyes. And that explanation is going to have people thinking, I don't know about this guy. And that's okay. That is okay. Time will tell if I'm right or not. But ask yourself this: are you willing to be bold for Christ? Are you willing to stand up when it's uncomfortable? Are you willing to share your faith in an atmosphere in your workplace or even at your family dinners at Thanksgiving where it's uncomfortable? Or are you going to cower back and hope people don't ask you about it? These are decisions that we're all going to have to make someday. Should everybody go out and get the name Jesus tattooed on their neck? Probably not, because not everybody is me, and not everybody's going to be that bold and willing to take those bullets. But I am, and I'm living in total freedom, and I want to do something bold for Christ, and I want to put it out there, and I want to honor him with my body and everything that I do. So there you go. That's the reason for the neck tattoo. And shout out my man, Arnaldo Radke. He's the best tattoo artist that I've ever been around, used, had work done by. He is at Club Tattoo at the Venetian in Las Vegas. He's moved locations from down the street. We followed Arnaldo down there, and he's done my last several pieces, and I appreciate him very, very much. So shout out Arnaldo. Okay, that takes care of the tattoo. All right, so I'm going to be cheating on my phone because I have a lot of my notes here on my phone, trying to get a little more tech savvy. Of course, I got a little notebook too, but see if we end up jumping into that or not. Okay, so I love that I came across this profile on Instagram. Life Untox. So it's Life, Lifeuntox. Okay, shout out. I love this because I'm lining up with what this person's putting down. So sunshine, okay? Sunshine is awful for you. Sunshine causes cancer. The sun is going to burn you. The sun is going to harm you. Man, that is freaking garbage, okay? The poison was never forced. It was offered gently until you forgot it was poison at all. You know who said that? Mark Twain said that. I'm going to say it again. The poison was never forced. It was offered gently until you forgot it was poison at all. So this post that I'm reading from and that I'm going to break down, it talks about exposing the everyday lies and the propaganda that were actively being sold every day in this country. Okay. Number one is the sun is bad for you. No, it is not. Is skin cancer a real thing? Yeah, it's a real thing. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to jump into all of that, but I'm going to tell you this. Sunscreen causes more cancer than the sun. Okay. They told you to fear the sun, to block it, to avoid it, to hide from the very thing that your body and your biology depends on. Sunlight fuels immunity, fuels hormones, and helps with longevity. The real danger was never exposure to the sun, but depriving yourself of sunlight. So sunscreen, let's talk about that. It's marked as protection. It's packed with endocrine disruptors and toxic chemicals that suppress the body's ability to produce vitamin D. This was never about health. It was about profit. They demonized nature to sell you the poison of sunscreen. Hmm, interesting. Lie number two is Big Pharma. Their mantra, a patient cured is a customer lost. Think they want to cure you of your ailments or diagnose you with more made up crap and overly medicate you? Just follow the data, follow the money. We'll get to that. The pharmaceutical industry isn't built to cure disease, it's built to monetize it. Real healing ends the cycle of profit. So treatments are designed to manage symptoms, not solve them. Once you get in the system, the medical system, it's like getting in the freaking criminal justice system. It's really hard to escape. Once you're in, you're in. They own you. Natural remedies and root cause approaches, they're dismissed, discredited, or even outlawed, not because they are ineffective, but because they can't be patented. The goal isn't your health, it's lifelong dependency, and it is worth billions. So I found some interesting data going back to 1990. So we're getting back a ways, but it's not ancient history. We're not going back 100 years. Let's go back to 1990. I'm going to go through a list of ailments. I'm going to tell you how much they've increased since 1990. You ready? ADHD increased 819%. Alzheimer's disease increased 300%. Autism, 2,094%. Bipolar disease in youth. You paying attention? Diagnosed an increase of 10,833%. Celiac disease, 1,100%. Chronic fatigue syndrome. What the freak are we even talking about? Chronic fatigue syndrome. I put my glasses on because this is a real thing. Trying to work the symptom. Chronic fatigue syndrome. So you're just tired a lot. Increased 11,027%. Depression increased 280%. Diabetes, 305%. Fibromyalgia, 7,200%. Hypothyroidism, 702%. Lupus, 787%. Osteoarthritis, 449%. And sleep apnea has been diagnosed with an increase of 430% since 1990. Guys, what do you think about that? Are people just that much less healthy now? Or is there an overdiagnosis of things that can be solved through lifestyle change? How many of the people that are on that list that are suffering from those things, how many of those people are obese? How many of them are alcoholics or drink too much? How many of them live on processed foods? How many of them fuel themselves with monster drinks and drink very little water? How many of them neglect sleep? How many of them get 10,000 steps a day? How many of them lift weights and build muscle? How many of them have a unhealthy BMI? How many of them have body fat at 30, 40%? I'm going to guess most. Another lie that you're being sold is about breakfast. Okay. Now, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's not. It's a meal of the day. Okay. But the whole breakfast thing is a lie that's been made by big food and big pharma who are in bed together. And I'm going to talk to you about breakfast. If you don't want to eat breakfast, don't eat breakfast. I eat breakfast because it fuels me post-workout, and I'm very strategic about what I put in my body. It's a mix of carbs, protein, and fat, but it's 50 to 75% protein, and then the other macros fill in the rest of the breakfast calories, because that's how I fuel my body post-training, okay? The idea that breakfast is essential was manufactured. A dude named Edward Bernays, he's considered the father of this propaganda, was hired to boost sales of breakfast foods, not to improve public health. The result is a generation hooked on sugar-laced cereals and processed carbs. Bagels, muffins, all that crap at Starbucks, they're sold to you as nutrition. There's no solid science behind the claim that breakfast is important, but it was never about health. It's about profit. Next, this is a hard truth to hear, but you know what? Go back to those other ailments. You're not freaking sick. You're deficient. Chronic fatigue, brain fog, anxiety, and even depression are often treated with prescriptions, but rarely with nutrition. I'm going to give you an example. There's someone that's close to me in my life who suffers from depression, who is actively seeing a therapist, no knock on therapy, um, unhealthy, has a lot of those metabolic sicknesses, very low energy, chronically depressed, chronic fatigue syndrome, all of those things. That person's doctor specifically told her two things: do not lift weights and stay out of the sun. I'm not making that up. Do not lift weights and do not go in the sun. I said, get another effing doctor. Now, we've had some problems since we had that conversation, but I felt that I was telling her the truth, but I could have done it in a little more love. Give you another example. Big fan of Greg Anderson, the Endless Endeavor podcast. Greg Anderson has a doctor friend who had a morbidly obese man in his office who was there to get some medication for diabetes and all this other kind of stuff. This doctor pulls out his prescription pad and he starts writing down 1 hour of sunshine per day, 30 minutes of walking per day, eliminate processed foods, prioritize protein, starts listing, drink a gallon of water a day, starts listing all these things. This patient went to the medical board in the state of Washington and had this doctor reprimanded. It's the only blemish in this doctor's multi-decade career. He was reprimanded for prescribing those things because his job is just to be a drug dealer. Deficiency gets labeled as disease, everybody. The symptoms become life sentences. There's no profit, you understand, in magnesium, in sunlight, in clean food. So they sell pills for problems that your body's trying to solve with nutrients it never received. You're not broken, you see, you're depleted. But big pharma wants to tell you you're broken, and these doctors are getting rich by being drug dealers. You ready for another one? A little bit off the physical realm. Here you go. Pay attention, everyone, especially you ladies. Feminism was a scam to double the workforce. Boom. Let's go. You were told it was about empowerment, but it was really about economics. Doubling the workforce meant more labor, lower wages, and twice the tax revenue, while the cost of living quietly rose to match two incomes. One income became impossible by design. Families fractured, kids were outsourced, and exhaustion became the norm. See, everybody, it wasn't about equality. It was about control disguised as progress. The family's broken up. Moms can no longer stay home and be parents to the children. We're outsourcing all of the care of our kids to public schools. Thus, everyone's too busy. Everyone's in a hurry, so we can't cook meals anymore. So who loves that? Guess what? Big food, big pharma. They go hand in hand. Inflation says, hey, now you have to both work in order to even have an average lifestyle. So everything has been plotted to get us to this point. This has been planned. This has been a decades-long degradation of our society. Another one. You guys ready for this? You know how I feel about this. Freaking climate change. The climate change hoax. Climate change isn't a crisis. It's a business model. The narrative's been weaponized to push carbon credits, green taxes, and endless solutions that enrich the few but burden the many. Behind every doomsday headline is an economic or political motive. The goal was never to save the planet. It was to sell you fear. It's to restrict your choices and enforce compliance under the illusion of what the left calls moral responsibility. The next lie you've been sold is that money can't buy happiness. And I'm here to tell you that money can buy happiness. Now, to an extent. Okay, hear me out. You've been told money doesn't matter, but it does. And not because it buys luxury, but because it buys freedom. I'm telling you, I've had a lot of money and I've had zero money and I've had somewhere in the middle, maybe towards the upper, but with a lot of freedom. I am telling you, freedom and health are the real wealth. And the government does not want you knowing that. Money doesn't matter because it buys luxury, but as I've said, it buys you freedom, time, health, choices, and the ability to live life on your terms. The system keeps you just busy enough to stay afloat, but never far enough ahead to escape it. So you got to stay in the loop, right? You got to get up, you got to work, you got to help somebody else build wealth. You got while you trade hours for survival, they use money to print more time and power. Man, got another one for you. You guys ready for this? We're just going to keep going down the conspiracy, quote unquote, rabbit hole and the controversy rabbit hole. I don't believe these are conspiracies. Some do. I do know they're controversial. The vaccine hoax. Okay. First off, I'm not anti-vaccine. Children should get vaccine for MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, those types of things. I'm about that. Okay. As long as we're, as parents, doing our individual research and have the ability to make our own choices for our own families without mandates. I'm absolutely against the government mandating. Hey, friends, thanks for checking out the podcast. Right now, I want you to text me at my personal cell number, 402-250-7499. I'm going to send you some PDFs from my first 2 books and a free link into our Building and Becoming School community. No catch, no gimmicks, just free value. Now back to the show. Vaccines have their place, but the narrative surrounding them quickly moved beyond science. What began as medicine became a tool of compliance, where questioning was forbidden and consent was coerced. Natural immunity was dismissed. Alternative perspectives were silenced, and pharmaceutical giants reaped record profits. See, it stopped being about health a long time ago. It started being about profit and control. 2020 was a great experiment in control and a great experiment in disunity. Can we divide them while taking control? That was the question that the World Economic Forum and the governments around the world collectively asked. And the answers were very clear. We absolutely can control them. We can create extreme division. We can have rioting in the streets. We can have factions of people way on the right and way on the left that can't see common ground. And that they will be so dug in on their personal views that families will be torn apart. Let that sink in. They were arresting people for being outside on a sandy beach. You're not allowed to be out here. I'm still walking by people with masks. What are we freaking talking about? We're still wearing masks? Absolutely nuts. Guys, what do you think of those things? I just told you that sunscreen's the real culprit. I told you that big pharma wants to keep you sick. I gave you what I believe are the fake disorders that have increased so many hundreds and thousands of percentages since 1990. I told you that the breakfast is the most important meal, is a trick and a tool of freaking big food, big pharma. Told you that most people aren't sick, they lack nutrients. I told you feminism's a scam. Told you climate change is a hoax. Told you that money can buy happiness. And I told you that the vaccine narrative is also freaking BS. What do you think of those things? It's a lot to take in. Guess what? There's more. Guys, ready? Okay. I found this next thing pretty freaking interesting, okay? So there's this show that's on Netflix, and it's about that expedition that they went down and they were going to discover the Titanic, and that, that tragedy happened and all that. So that got me looking into the Titanic a little bit. And I just want to go a little bit deeper because I don't know that much about the history. I know it was a luxurious boat and it sank. And, I've seen the movie and that dude's king of the world and all that crap. And who cares? And by the way, that chick could have saved that dude on that raft. There was room. I don't know why she let that poor sucker die, but that is what it is. Rose is forever going to have to deal with that. But let's move on. I found some pretty great research here, so I'm going to dive in. You ready? Dun, dun. The Titanic was not an accident. It was the first domino in a global takeover. What? Yeah. On board the Titanic were a handful of enemies of what's come to be known as central banking. They died, The bankers survived, and the very next year, you ready for this? The Federal Reserve was born. See the thread? We're going to pull on that thread a little bit because we see the little thread, okay? In 1910, a secret meeting took place in Georgia. Okay, there's a little island off of Georgia. It's called Jekyll Island. The attendees included Paul Warburg, Nelson Aldrich, who's part of the Rockefeller clan, representatives from J.P. Morgan, you've heard of J.P. Morgan Chase, Rothschild-connected bankers, and a dude named Jacob Schiff. The Schiffs are still very powerful in this country politically. Their agenda was to create a private central bank, and their goal was to get control of America's money, right? Because America was getting really wealthy really fast. Manufacturing was booming, and there was all of this money. So they needed to get control of America's money, and the outcome of this meeting was that the Federal Reserve Act was passed 2.5 short years later, 1913. There was zero public debate, pretty much no resistance, but they did have one problem. See, in 1912, the Titanic set sail, and on board were 3 special men. Ready? These men were John Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, like the museum, and Isidor Strass. They all died. They were on the Titanic. They represented old money who could have slowed down the shift towards central banking. Okay? These 3 extremely wealthy, powerful men, since the beginning of our nation, they were vehemently against any centralized banking. The bankers who supported the Fed, there was a handful of them that were also scheduled to be on the Titanic. Conveniently, every one of them never showed. Had tickets, never showed. They conveniently stayed off the ship. So in 1913, the Federal Reserve Act passes. There was no one left in the way. The Federal Reserve was then created. Everything changed because the U.S. now had a central bank. So the Fed, as it's called, Federal Reserve, it's not federal. I know that gets a little bit confusing. That's why all this stuff that's on the news about Donald Trump is going to fire Powell, the head of the Fed. He really can't fire him legally. And I don't like all of this talk about because they're supposed to be separate. But the Fed is not federal, and it also has no reserves. I don't even know where the name comes from. It's a private banking cartel. Okay, that's what this deal is. It's a cartel, make no mistake about it. It's a private banking cartel that controls inflation. They set inflation. They'll have you believe, oh, inflation's just happening. Now we have to deal with it. They set inflation. Okay, they set inflation, interest rates, the amount of U.S. government debt, monetary policy, and guess what? They indirectly control the creation of more money through the printing presses. The Fed doesn't necessarily print the money directly, but it makes debt creation possible on a massive scale. Okay, so now we're at what, 1913. Okay, in 1914, you know what happened? World War I. Now, for the first time in U.S. history, a central bank helped finance a global war. Does that sound familiar? Does that still happen now? Yep, but this was the first time. Banks loaned governments billions of dollars. Now, billions is a lot of freaking money now. Excuse me. Back then, an incredible amount of money. So banks loaned the governments billions of dollars to wage war. The government spent the money. And guess who paid it back? The citizens paid back the government's debts around the globe through taxes. Interesting. This pattern has repeated itself ever since. It created this cycle, okay? Now, I don't care if you're 100 years old or 15 years old. You've seen this cycle, and it gets repeated and repeated and repeated by the warmongers that are in our government. Are you ready? Here's the cycle. Number 1. A conflict breaks out. You see it all the time, don't you? Oh, this country bombed this country, or this happened here, or this happened here, and we better intervene. Okay, so a conflict breaks out. Governments need to borrow billions of dollars. Central banks then print the money. So they don't have the money to loan them. It's like if you said, "Hey, Jim, can I borrow $1,000?" I'm like, "Sure. I don't have $1,000, but I have this printing press. Let me print $1,000 and give it to you. Now you owe it to me." What I've done is I've lowered the value of that because I've put more money into circulation, so those dollars become worth less, thus inflation and all those things. So number three is the central banks print the money. The citizens pay with taxes. Bankers profit from the interest, and you get inflation. Endless wars mean endless profit. There is nothing better for a country's economy and banking profit than war. So today, the system still runs on debt. It's called, you ready for this? Fractional reserve banking. Here's what happens. You deposit $1,000 into a bank. The bank lends out $9,000. Well, where'd the other $8,000? It's created out of thin air. Then they charge interest on money that never really existed, and your money becomes worth less over time. The result of that is more loans, more dollars, less value per dollar. That's called inflation. It's a silent, hidden tax. Prices go up, but wages stagnate. Here's the game they play. This happened a few years ago when Biden was in office. So they will print a ton of money. And now the cost of goods and services goes up because your dollar buys less. So let's say that you have to spend 12% more at the grocery store for the same amount of groceries, okay? That sucks, and everyone's going to freak out about that, except they suckered you like this. They actually created a wage increase. You remember when suddenly people went from making $13 an hour to 20? And they're like, I'm making so much money. Here's what they did, though, okay? As inflation went up, call it 12 to 15%. Wages went up, but call it 7%. So what they've done is you're making more money and you're happy. And look, I got a raise. But guess what? That gap is larger, so you have less disposable income. So you're working just as hard for more money on paper and more tax burden, but it buys you less. So you're more broke than you were prior to getting your raise. Do you understand what I'm saying here? This is the game. That's called inflation. Prices rise, wages stagnate, your money buys you less, and it's every single year, and it's by design, okay? This isn't mismanagement on their part. It's engineered dependence. The progressives, the left, the Democrats, the socialists, they want you totally dependent upon the government. All money is born of debt, and you owe interest on every dollar, but the system creates more debt to cover the interest. And it's a loop that can never end. We talk about, we have all this national debt and this is it's untenable. It's never going to end. The only way it ends is if countries get together and agree to eliminate their debt or cut it by 50%. That would be disastrous, but it's talked about often. You see, they go to these G7 meetings and the leaders of the 7 largest industrialized nations in the world get together. What do you think they're talking about? Climate change. And nope, they're not. They're talking about how they can eliminate a lot of the debt that they owe each other. So here's what it goes. Here's how it goes. There's more war. There's more printing of money. There's more debt. You're paying more taxes. You're working harder than ever for less disposable income. You suffer. Bankers get richer. And that's the way it goes. So if you control the money, you control the world. Elections really aren't that big a deal. It comes down to who's printing the money and who owns the money. The one with the money gives the orders. It's called the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. So there's that. I'm going to go a little bit deeper with you. There's been people who opposed central banking. Okay. You might have heard of some of them. JFK signed an executive order to issue silver-backed dollars, meaning there used to be silver certificates. So if you had a $100 bill and it said silver certificate on it, it was the shape of a $100 bill. It looked like green currency. That's what we used to have. That meant that somewhere in Fort Knox or someplace, there was $100 worth of precious metal, silver, that would back up that currency. So we only could print and have as much currency as we could back it up with. JFK wanted to get back to that silver backed, that precious metal backed system. What happened to JFK? Oh, that's right. The freaking government killed him. Muammar Gaddafi, admittedly a bad guy. He was a dictator in Libya. He proposed a gold backed African currency for the entire continent of Africa. Okay. So as soon as that got proposed, so he was a scumbag and doing awful things for decades, but we left him in power. The CIA put him in power, left him there for decades committing atrocities because he was in their back pocket. Okay. Now, what happens as soon as he decided he wanted to propose a gold-backed African currency? Well, his country, Libya, was invaded and he was killed. A horrific death. I'm just telling you that leaders around the world that propose these things, and these aren't the only. It's freaking crazy to me. You wonder why there's so much hate against Jewish people. And I think a lot of it stems from that way back when this was all started, that the Jewish people were the leaders who were in charge of the banks. Okay. And I'm not anti-Jew. I'm not anti-Semitic, none of that stuff, but I'm giving you the facts that Jewish people controlled the money back then. And in Christian Europe, interest was banned. The Jews didn't like this, and they came in and they changed that whole system. And the Jewish legacy that shaped this interest-backed system and making these bankers rich is the legacy that shapes today's modern banking. Those are just the facts. Take out of it what you want. So the Titanic, we started this part of the conversation about the Titanic. It wasn't just a shipwreck, it was a power shift. It was a moment when history was quietly rewritten. Those who opposed central banking died at sea, and the survivors built the financial system that we still live under. This system funds war, it funds big pharma, it funds big food, and the same system profits from crisis. The same system controls your freedom without ever firing a bullet. Money equals power, and that power is controlling you. Why? Because in today's world, people will do almost anything for money. Ask yourself how much of your life you're selling out for that precious dollar. How hard are you working for somebody else? How much of your hard-earned disposable money that you get after you're paying taxes to the government actually goes to you, and how much of it goes to interest? Go to any big city and look at the high-rises, the skyscrapers. They're built on interest. Insurance companies, banks. That's where the wood's at, guys. And you're killing themselves to make them rich. The Titanic wasn't the end, everybody. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of what we still are living under, and the government is still manipulating the hell out of us. The big medical industry also manipulating you to no end. I saw something earlier today on Facebook, and I've lost people to cancer. My father passed away at the age of 59 from lung cancer. So I'm not immune to understanding the horrific toll that cancer takes on people. I've lost good friends to cancer. My great friend Dave Ballard had pancreatic cancer. And I saw this post, and they got the ribbon on there, and it says, F, I don't want to swear, but it says F cancer. And I thought, yeah, I can get on board with that because no one can argue with that, right? Hold on. Maybe I can, or at least not argue with, but help you maybe have an additional perspective. I'd like to offer you a different perspective. What if we woke up tomorrow and instead of saying F cancer, we said F everything we're being manipulated to put in our bodies that causes it? Who's profiting from what you're putting in your body? Are they in bed with people that also profit from the sickness that it causes? Do you believe that big pharma, big food, big government, do you think that they want you strong? You think they want you fit and capable? You think they want you off of medication? You think they want you a free, smart thinking person? You think that they want you operating in your God-given destiny to build the life for you and your family that needs no government intervention? They don't want any of that. They want you sick, fat, afraid, addicted, incapable, and dependent. I am not being that dude. They freaking hate me Okay. I'm throwing it out there to hundreds of thousands of people because I don't give a damn. I want you to at least think of the perspectives that I've given you today. F cancer. How about F your horrible lifestyle? How about F the fat that you've put on your body over the years and your sloth like lifestyle? How about F the fact that you're a disrespected glutton, that you're a joke to those in your life? How about we say F that? How about we start walking out our God given destiny? How about we have the balls to stand up and say no more? We're not going to play the freaking game. We're not going to take the meds and eat the cookies and drink the monster drinks and smoke the cigarettes and drink the alcohol and take the medication, pop the benzos, be disengaged, work 5 days so we can party for 2. Let's get out of that cycle. How about we say F that stuff instead of F cancer? How about if we say F that stuff, we won't have to say F cancer. Think about that perspective. I'm going to end there, guys. This might be one you need to go back and listen to again. If there's a nugget in here that you think somebody in your life needs to hear, I want you to share this show with them. I also want you to not be afraid to engage with me in the comments. You're not going to hurt my feelings, but have it be something intelligent. Okay, let's have some counterpoint discussions here, because the idea is I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want to get better. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm trying to provide interesting perspectives and get your mind working. I want you to start being thinking people, because that's what makes you dangerous. Everybody, I appreciate you. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Reach out if I can help you with anything. And until next time, let's grow.